Hello, Hans, can you hear me? Oh, sorry, Mark, can you hear me? Hans.
I can hear you, Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Awesome.
Beautiful. Let's invite Mr. Hans, Mr. Hans as well, to get up on stage. But yeah, morning everyone here from Denmark. I can see people are tuning in. That's great to see. The THORChain and Rujira community coming together. Are you able to invite Hans, Chris? I don't think I can right now.
No, he's got a request to speak.
All right. If you can hear us, Hans, please request.
Now, actually, I can do this.
Exciting times, huh? We got the burning away. We got more income from affiliates. We got more income streams from the app layer that we're going to talk about today, I'm sure. So lots of things to be excited about if you are in THORChain and Rune, I think, these days.
Yeah, exactly. Probably just need to bring this over here, getting myself set up. All right, I think we've got everybody. So I'm going to get started. We're going to get into the V50 upgrade just straight away so we can save some time. So from what I understand, this is, I guess, more directed to Hans, V50 was merged. So talk to me more about what does that bring and what does it allow that wasn't possible before, and why is this important, particularly to THORChain as well as Rujira?
I'm not able to hear Hans. I don't know if you guys are.
No, I'm not. Okay, so yeah. Hans is going to rejoin. Maybe can you answer some of that question, Mark?
Yeah, let me just. I think this is happening all the time on spaces like these. When you join from desktop, the mic doesn't work.
Really?
Just ping him so he, if he doesn't hear it himself. Because I would really like Hans to be able to explain. He's been working on this for quite some time, together with Pluto and Nine Realms. So I really don't want to steal his thunder here. Okay, I think you're back, Hans. Are you able to speak?
I think so. Is this working?
Yep. Beautiful.
Excellent. Sorry. Yep. Classic spaces.
All right. Do you want me to answer the question? Ask the question again?
Yes, please. Sorry, missed it.
So, just want to dive in for the sake of time. So, V50, the V50 upgrade for THORChain was merged. I know that comes in the next release. So, I want to know, talk to me more about what the V50 is. What does it bring? What does it allow that wasn't possible before? And why would this be important, particularly to THORChain and to Rujira?
I mean, the V50 upgrade has been long overdue for a while. It's under the hood. It's just a lot of modern Cosmos stack that's being upgraded. We wouldn't have been able to put Cosmosm and the app layer onto THORChain in a modern way without V50. So there's lots of kind of under the hood updates that basically make progress and moving forward much easier and much more straightforward.
Sweet. So how I like to think about it is THORChain was like, if you think of THORChain like Ethereum, where for the longest time, THORChain's been running without any smart contracts, all the lens save and all of that, and the swapping's done in the core protocol. And now for the first time, the V50 enables like smart contracts to be deployed on it. Like you have smart contracts on Ethereum, this will be the first time the smart contract can be deployed on THORChain. Is that
that's
correct?
it. Yeah, so V50 unlocks the ability to add this smart contract layer. And what's really nice about this design is like you say, you've got the base layer, the core of THORChain, which does what it does incredibly well. Connects to all these layer ones, does the native layer 1 to layer 1 swaps. And so the architecture for the app layer is that a smart contract is basically the access points that it has into the base layer are the same that any individual has with their wallet. Everything goes through a message deposit with a memo for swapping or for withdrawing secured assets. And so there's no kind of increased privileges for a smart contract. There's nowhere else it can break things or touch the vaults in a way that isn't fully tested already. It's just integrated into the same consensus mechanism and shares the same blocks, so that it's automated and secured by the same validators. So you have smart contracts which are trustless aggregators of funds or doing whatever they need to do in a way that is completely isolated, or is isolated from the base layer in the same way that all existing users are and have been since the start of the chain. So it's the use of Cosmosm in this way. It's a really nice architecture.
All right, cool. Since we're on that subject, so I know that it's the in and out is message deposit, which is, as you said, how THORChain works now, and the out point is the TX out, which is again how THORChain works now. And you can add an aggregator piece at the end to append something to the TX out. That's my understanding, right? For how it integrates.
Yeah, so there'll be a number of ways depending on the actual behavior that you want. So at the moment, you can basically do a layer 1 swap, and then you can, if the target of that swap is a THORChain asset, Rune or whatever, then you can pipe that to another memo, and you could call a contract with the resultant funds of that swap. Equally, you will now also be able to call a smart contract from your layer 1 wallet. So if you instead of asking for a swap in the memo, you ask to execute a contract. That contract under the hood with the funds that you send it from your layer 1 wallet could do that swap, or it could do anything else, or it could do some chained version of it. It could swap it and then deposit it into a lending vault. And so the possibilities for composability and flexibility of what you do with a memo and with a single deposit is just going to explode, really.
You see, you touched on, I know that there are some bindings being created that actually allow the smart contract to integrate with THORChain, where you can do a sequence of memos and a number of memos and sequence them up and send them to THORChain so they can be like executed sequentially. Can you just talk more about that and the bindings on how it works and some of the possibilities there?
Yeah, exactly. So the way that if you have assets on THORChain itself, the way you interact with them is via this message deposit type and then encode your instruction into the memo. And like I say, smart contracts are only going to be able to integrate via this route as well. They don't get any privileged access to call any functions inside the chain core code. They have to put everything through the same message type. But what a smart contract can do is when it emits a response to a contract call, it can queue up a whole bunch of different sub messages. So instead of just firing off one single message, it could fire a chain, it could fire 2 or 3, and then it could provide a callback for one of them. So when a swap completes, it's then called again. It's like, okay, right, I've got my swap back now. I can do something else with those funds. And so the design space is massive. The possibilities for what you can do with this are basically kind of limited by imagination rather than anything else.
That is pretty cool. So I did put this in my video. If anyone hasn't seen my latest video, check it out for a visual. But just talk about the layout. So I kind of said that and THORChain, the base layer, will have the same pools because we're not fragmenting liquidity. We'll keep the same pools, what we call short tail, the most economic significant ones. And then understanding the app layer, you're going to have these exotic pools, stuff that isn't listed on THORChain. Just talk to me about what these exotic pools would be and how would that work in the Rujira layer, app layer.
So yeah, I think this is all still a topic of conversation, and nothing has been kind of nailed down yet. All assets that come into THORChain and then therefore can exist on the app layer as a secured asset coming through the standard rails, and this was a decision to ensure that all the security properties and incentives and security budgets were correctly kind of assigned to new assets entering the ecosystem. So technically speaking, any asset that enters can be pulled at the base layer as normal. What we'll be doing on the app layer is more around order books and more kind of experimental market making strategies. So we'll have kind of you can kind of see an order book like a liquidity pool, but it doesn't have a fixed swap rate. It has a rate based on whatever people's limit orders have in that pool. We might have some concentrated liquidity pools. We might have some completely. We can kind of experiment a little bit with this kind of market making strategies, and then that gives the app layer an opportunity to do kind of split swap routing with calculations about how to optimize a swap across a collection of base layer pools, limit orders, concentrated liquidity in order to achieve the best price for a single swap for a user.
All right, I'm going to touch more on the details on the apps a little bit later, but I'll be keen to dig into that. Whilst we're on this, we talked in the last space, they talked about security. So I know as a part of the integration, I'd just like to expand on that. So we've got the latest. I know that the app layer has been integrated into, we'll take controls, all the Halt controls and stuff like that in the base layer. So that way it can turn off stuff in the base layer, like nodes can vote to either shut down trading or to turn flag on and off certain smart layer or certain smart contracts. You just expand on the security controls that the base layer and the nodes will have with regards to the app layer, please.
Yeah, so in the same way that the nodes have the ability to halt trading, halt deposits, they'll have various abilities to halt parts of the app layer in different scale, different scopes. So the simplest scope is to halt a specific smart contract execution. If there seems to be a problem with just one specific contract, or for whatever reason, a calls to a single contract can be halted. The second level of control is with what's called the contract checksum. So most of the permissioning of deployment of smart contracts, or all of the permissioning of deployment of smart contracts, is based on this checksum, which is a value that's returned by the WASM virtual machine when you store a code, store a contract, and is basically just a short representation of the code that you've stored, and you have to have a version of THORChain, either memed or I think maybe with some permissioning JSON, to whitelist a deployer address for a checksum, so that somebody can look at that checksum, they can see where it was originally compiled from, they can go to that source code, they can clone it down to their local machine, check out the revision that is on THORChain and compile it themselves, and verify that checksum is actually what has been given permission and the code is accurate. So it provides that tight, trustless binding without having to deploy the code directly to the THORChain repo. Now, the nice thing about this is that if, let's say, there was a bug found in a specific revision of the code, then you might potentially have lots of different contracts deployed with that same code with lots of different addresses, and you don't want to have to go and try and switch them all off individually. So this second layer of control is to be able to switch off executions of a specific checksum of code. So you can say, we found a problem in this version of this code, and we just want to halt execution of it completely. And so you can do that with a single Mima, and it turns off execution for all of that code type. And then the third layer of control is just like a app layer hold, like hold execution for all smart contracts.
That's sick.
And I think, sorry, just to chime in, Chris, and for everybody listening, this is, I guess, in a nutshell, why we want to separate base layer and app layer. Adding all this functionality that we intend to add on Rujira in the app layer, it becomes a security risk on the base layer if we put it there instead. So better to separate and have these three mechanisms and gatekeepers, if you will, that Hans just laid out, instead of building it on the base layer directly. I think that's an important distinction and reason why we're making this separation between base and app layer.
All right, cool. I probably should have prefaced this is probably going to be more of a technical space, because we, just trying to get into the details of how it's going to work. I think everyone's kind of sold on Rujira is good. So yeah, just so everyone listening, it's going to be more, like I said, a touch more technical. And I didn't know about the 3 levels, so that's really cool. So since you've got a hash, we hash the smart contract, and then that has a unique identifier. You could say like a hash. It's not a hash, but it's like a hash. Then that can be added to the whitelist for deployment, and then you can use Mimir to turn on and off that smart contract referencing the hash. The second layer is almost like a library-based thing. If you've got like a certain set of code, it feels like a library-based control.
Yeah, so the hash is for the second layer. Every contract that when you take you store your code on chain, which has the hash, and then you instantiate a new version of it. And every time you instantiate a new version of it, or a new version and just a new instance of it, it gets its own address. So it'll have a THORChain address, and that's what you can Mima on and off for individual control.
Oh, so it's like instantiating a class.
Yeah, exactly.
Sweet. Okay, cool. And the third one, completely shut off app layer. That's sick. Is there anything else? I want to talk about secured assets next, but is there anything else we should talk about regarding integration? That's relevant.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've been working on and trying to do for quite some time is to obviously integrate with more Cosmos native wallets, Kepler, Leap, all these wallets out there. And this is also becoming possible. I think you already alluded to it earlier, Chris, but we're sort of, instead of having the sort of custom message sent that we have had for a long time in THORChain, we are changing to the default Cosmos message sent, which will open up the opportunity to integrate or have Kepler integrate THORChain and all the other Cosmos native wallets, which will fit nicely with the IBC when we get to that point of enabling IBC. So yeah, I guess that's also a nice benefit with the V50.
Yep, that's coming in the next release. That is in my notes. That's one of the things I know JP is extremely bullish about when that happens, to integrate into everything. It's just like so much more exposure. So thanks for that. Hans, secured assets. I think people want to know, so I'll leave it to you. What are they? How do they work? What's the dev status? Because I know they're flagged for the next release. And will they allow streaming swaps?
So to work backwards, yes, they will support streaming swaps. Secured assets are basically on a code level. They are almost identical to trade assets, except instead of them having their own internal THORChain accounting system, they have your ownership of a secured asset is accounted for with the Cosmos SDK bank module, which is a small change. But the key difference is that smart contracts understand what a bank token looks like, can interact with it, can send them around, can store them at their own address. And so it basically means that we have this tokenized representation of assets in the Asgard vaults that smart contracts can use and can be transferred and moved around on the app layer.
I confirm they're definitely a bank token, not a CW20.
They are 100% a bank token. Yes, apologies for that message.
Okay, cool. I've got another. How does streaming swaps, so across the two different layers, so how would that work with that? And when you move across the different layers, so if you're on a streaming swap for a bridged asset that originates from the app layer, would that affect price execution? Like, is there any considerations there or not?
No, I mean it's basically the same thing that's happening. That if you're going to call a streaming swap from a layer one, or call it from a secured asset that you have on the app layer, it's largely similar. The fees charged might be this is why secured assets are currently separate from trade assets, because trade assets have a different fee structure to layer one swap, and so this gives flexibility for secured assets to have a different structure there as well.
Yeah, for anyone listening, every asset type can charge its own fee. There's a function called, I think, min swap fee inside of THORChain, and there's a mimir for each asset type. So that's why trade assets can be different to L1s, to synthetics, to secured assets, and everything else. So
yeah, just to touch on the whole bank module, bank tokens versus CW20 tokens. I assume there are some people who are not super tuned into the Cosmos tech stack and Cosmos, etc. I mean, some of the properties that we get from using making secured assets bank tokens is all these different IBC modules that are directly compatible. So that's one of many reasons, I would say. You can speak more to this, Hans, but there are some nice properties from the bank module that we tap into. Speaking of JP, who wants to integrate with everything, it's important for us, right, to be able to allow these assets to be able to be compatible with IBC and all the other marvelous Cosmos technologies out there. But I don't know, Hans, if like when you thought through the process of how to set up these assets, CW20 versus bank tokens, was that also the considerations, or were there more considerations you had?
So this was a decision we made when we launched Rujira, actually, as well. So CW20 tokens are as the name suggests, kind of like the CosmWasm implementation of ERC20. So it's tokens that you mint in your smart contract layer, and so they're a layer above your base layer, and so anything that your base layer wants to do, like you say, like IBC, or using them as gas fees or gas tokens or whatever, you can't, like the base layer that has no idea about CW20s. It's just a smart contract. So and then when you come to actually writing a smart contract, you have to provide two entry points. You have to you have your normal entry point, which is when somebody executes your contract, they can send some funds, some bank funds, and your smart contract gets past that as part of its execution argument. But then you've also got to support a separate entry point for when a CW20 contract calls your contract with some of its own funds, and so it makes contract development a bit more annoying. Excuse me. And it reduces compatibility with a whole bunch of native modules. So I think I see CW20 as sort of like a legacy standard in this space. It's when we have the flexibility that we do with the core chain protocol to just expose a couple of methods and allow, provide the right permissioning around token creation, then it just makes so much more sense for everything. Or it's like anytime you need to account for ownership of something, to use bank module. It goes beyond just secured assets. For example, the way that GoStar, the money market, accounts for debt is using bank tokens. So when a lending vault lends money to a CDP contract, it'll mint a debt token, and that debt token is then inflated, so that to the degree that the lending vault requires repayment, and it becomes a really nice way of accounting for anything, really, and it provides flexibility and this composability.
Cool. So I have a question regarding secured assets. So we know that, like any asset that gets created and secured, there's a cost of security for that asset within THORChain, and that we want that to be productive. So like trade assets generate swap fees, L1s generate swap fees, synths generate swap fees, savings build depth. So I wanted to know what the thinking is for. Well, we also know that having a whole bunch of liquidity sitting in there, like if you mint a whole bunch of trade assets or secured assets that don't do anything, that's not good for the protocol. So is there any thinking around how to incentivize productive utilization of secured assets so they don't become just dormant and idle within the protocol, or be moved out of the protocol?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of things here. There is the accounting model for secured assets allows the base layer, or the function is there, it's not connected currently, allows the base layer to basically it's a tokenized representation, so it's not a guaranteed one-to-one withdrawal. It allows the base layer to inflate the supply of the secured asset artificially, effectively diluting current holders by some marginal percentage, whatever it is. If at some point it's deemed necessary for the base protocol to be charging a fee on the secured assets because there are too many of them and they're not doing anything. I think the more pragmatic view here, I mean, the reason for having that is just so there's a lever there to do it if it needs to be done. It's not wired up. It's there's no actual mechanism to do that currently. The more pragmatic approach here is that contracts that are deployed to the app layer should probably be assessed around their kind of like capital utilization. If there's a contract that's being deployed that is just going to just take a massive deposit for whatever reason and not charge any fees for it and not contribute to security for it, then it creates an incentive structure where you're just going to get secured asset deposits with no security. And at that point, it really should be a discussion with the protocol developer, like what justifies this use of secured assets without paying for the security of them. And so, yeah, I my view, I think, is that that kind of that charging a fee at the boundary between the layer 1 and THORChain, where you deposit and withdraw your secured assets, it should be unnecessary. There's another discussion around what happens when secured assets are exportable over IBC, because then you have exactly that case. You end up with large deposits of secured assets, or large amounts of secured assets secured by the chain that have then just disappeared. And so if there's a case to charge fees, it's on that boundary. What's that boundary? As they leave for potentially, I mean, this also isn't in any way even built yet. exporting assets over IBC. But it was just kind of that in my view is where there would potentially be a good reason to charge fees.
All right, cool. Just as a site, like I guess for people that are listening, what we're talking about is potential, because they're not done, controls in the event that a secured assets gets too big, like huge amounts of capital there, become secured assets. You need, potentially a way to control that, and that's why, because obviously that will affect the incentive pendulum and potentially, and also increase essentially secured in the incentive pendulum. That's why the incentive pendulum needs to bake, particularly when this goes in, because no one knows how the market's going to respond to secured assets. We just don't know. We just know that a lot of unsecured assets, unproductive assets for THORChain is just not a good thing, because there's a cost to securing assets, regardless of whether, L1 assets in the pools or whatever else. So that's why it's important. But I guess we need that market feedback at the same time. And by the sounds of it, Hans obviously looking at the smart contracts to see, well, is this going to be a benefit to THORChain as well? Or is it going to, generate income, or is it's just a complete waster of a smart contract? Is there anything else you want to say regarding smart contracts that I haven't covered?
I mean, I could talk all day about smart contracts. So yeah.
We talked about this. So secured assets can go out through IBC. Is that something you're thinking about now, or you want to just work within the core protocol first and get that right and think about it later?
Core protocol. It's kind of just a thought for the future, exporting over IBC.
Okay, cool. I want to talk more about the Rujira apps. I want to talk about the composability options. First, I think it's probably good to talk about the Rujira apps, because I know I'm not that familiar with it. So maybe just give a bit of an overview. Mark, feel free to jump in. We've got the merge, the pools, the DEX, lending, perps. What are these things? What's the rollout order, and maybe some ETAs? That some information you could share around that.
Yeah, certainly. I'll let you grab some tea or whatever over there in the UK, Hans, and clear your throat. So yeah, for anyone who hasn't tried Rujira dApps, go on Rujira.network and just play around. It will give you a good sense of what's coming to THORChain, which I think it's something to look forward to. In a nutshell, you can see all the dApps that we are bringing over to Rujira on the docs.rujira.network. There's a list of all the products. The first ones will be Ruji Trade and Ruji Pools, better known as Fin and Bao on Rujira right now. So that's basically the order book, and the pools, which has these sort of capabilities where you create liquidity in the order books on Fin or Ruji Trade. So that's going to be the first. That's also, I think, the most exciting things that we want to bring to THORChain from the get-go, having limit orders and more trades, more activity around trading, which is what THORChain is sort of the claim to fame right now, mainly swapping via AMM and pools, but having an order book on the app layer is certainly going to be unleashing some activity there. So that's going to be the first, and then the Levana team has joined in on Rujira and deploying their perp exchange. So anyone who hasn't tried Levana's products, you can go on levana.finance, I think is the domain. Try out the perp exchange that they have on Osmosis, Neutron, and some other networks, Injective maybe. So it's a pretty solid product. They have gone through various iterations on multiple networks, and they're bringing that to Rujira now. So finally, you can go very long or very short on your favorite assets on THORChain using perps, which is obviously exciting when you look at very successful perp exchanges like DYDX. You can only imagine what happens when we deploy that on THORChain with all liquidity sitting on THORChain already. So that's pretty cool. And from there, it gets a bit fuzzy, of course, on the roadmap side, because there's a lot of unexpected things that typically happens when you ship just these 3 products. But obviously, we want to bring over the liquidation market. That's sort of the OG dApp on Rujira, sort of their original claim to fame when Hans deployed that on Terra. And by the way, for anyone who doesn't know the Rujira story, like the guys from the Rujira ecosystem, they've gone through everything that you can imagine. They've gone through the Terra collapse, they've gone through the trouble with the Rujira, and now migrating over to THORChain. But yeah, the liquidation market, better known as Orca, was the original claim to fame. Funny enough, also one of the main reasons for the Terra collapse, because of all the liquidations, the cascading effect happening on Orca, and also for Kuchi, actually. So I don't know. I hope it doesn't happen the same way. History doesn't repeat itself when we deploy Orca, the liquidation market on THORChain. But I, for one, love to bid on my favorite assets and get up to a 30% discount on the liquidated assets. So I look very much forward to having liquidations there. Yeah, so go on docs.rujira.network, guys, to see the full list. In terms of the timelines, Chris, to answer your question, we hope to deploy end of Jan, beginning of Feb, the Ruji Trade and Ruji Pools products. Shortly after, maybe a month after, perps coming. And then from there, as I mentioned, the roadmap gets a bit fuzzy, or the timelines at least gets a bit fuzzy, because there's a lot of dependencies on this.
All right, cool. So to clarify, like with pools, if I understand, pools is just like normal swapping, but the DEX part is the order books, which can either use limit orders like a club, or you can also use base layer to get liquidity as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So the pools I think is going to cover a handful of different products. So pools will be kind of passive liquidity for exotic market making strategies, concentrated liquidity, Oracle based pricing, that kind of thing. But also I think for the ease of use for new participants, pools will also include like lending deposits. So single-sided pools for lending USDC, for example. There then will be FIN, which is the order book, like you say, CLOB, which, you know, in one, you can look at it one way and say it's like it's an order book, and you can look the other way and say it's like a pool, because it's something that somebody can swap assets over. And so all of these, I guess, swappable venues, so the base layer, the limit orders, the exotic market making pools, will all be represented when you load up the trading interface. So you'll see an order book when you open like Ruji Trade, and it will show you obviously all the limit orders that are in the book and their aggregate, but it will also basically virtualize all the liquidity that is available to the app layer in there as well. So you'll see the kind of the virtual orders that will be placed by the base layer. You'll see virtualized orders for concentrated liquidity or Oracle-based liquidity, or all of these kind of more exotic strategies. And so it should really, and this is kind of the one of the really kind of exciting things about being able to deploy onto THORChain, is that it's this kind of, we have an opportunity to aggregate this liquidity and layer limit orders and layer concentrated liquidity on top of the huge amounts of base layer XYK liquidity we have already.
So when you say virtualized liquidity, is that where you can offer either through, you know, the DEX or the base layer pools a BTC USDC trading pair? Understanding that obviously, you know, THORChain can't do that without Rune, but is that what you mean by virtualizing or rolling up the liquidity
Yeah,
pairs
exactly.
to offer a different product?
So at the moment, Fin exists. Fin can only trade with the liquidity that it has in limit orders, and so if you're going to have, Bo, which is the market maker, is actively placing orders and moving capital onto the order book in order to be that market maker. But the way the architecture will slightly change for the Rujira deployment is that it will be kind of pool based, as long as the liquidity provider can guarantee or is willing to guarantee a swap execution at a certain price. The Fin as an order book can be like, okay, right, fine, I can consider that to be an order in the book, because when I get a swap, I can market order for that that will consume that virtual order. I know I'll be able to execute it. And so now you've got an architecture which allows you to aggregate all the liquidity, and it doesn't, because you don't move it into the order book, it can be represented on multiple different books. Yeah.
Cool. I think I know what you're saying. That is cool. We'll be doing some questions afterwards. So if people have questions around that, save them, because we'll get there.
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to go to lending. So I know we talked a bit about lending. This is going to be Bitcoin-based lending, like native Bitcoin-based lending. From what I understand, this is not possible, and it's going to be pretty big. So why? Let's open it up. It's an open-ended question. Why will BTC lending be so big, and why has it not been done before? Native BTC lending.
Yeah, so for context for everybody, Chris, Hans, and myself, we met not too long ago, and we had a few conversations with some Bitcoin whales, and there were some Bitcoin miners in there as well, and they were just super frustrated guys on their sort of the options that they had to either wrap their Bitcoin and take out a stablecoin loan, for example, on a money market like Aave, with all the risk that involves wrapping your Bitcoin, or basically sell it. If you are, for example, a miner, you have cost, operations, utilities to pay. So you need to get some form of cash out at some point to pay all these expenses. And when we started talking about lending, so as you can see, there's a lot of products that we are excited about, but lending seems to be the one that people are most excited about. And from there's also a conversation on a Bitcoin-backed stable, but I'm not going to get into that. Let's focus on lending for now. Because with secured assets, as we talked about earlier, you don't need to wrap it, you don't need to bridge it, you don't need to do all these things that you need to do on Ethereum and other chains. You need to secure it. I think a good example that Boone, I think is his name, did a thread on when he wrote about secured assets. You can think of secured assets like, if you compare it to wrap BTC on Ethereum. With wrap BTC on Ethereum, you trust essentially one node, BitGo, and they're multi-sig, that they're not gonna mess up, steal your money or whatever. With THORChain and secured assets, you have 120 nodes, and it's growing the network. So if you just take that number, it's 120 times better, more secure, to have secured assets on THORChain versus wrap Bitcoin on Ethereum. I know that's a very simplified example, but you get the train of thought, I think, over here. So that obviously speaks to Bitcoin whales, Bitcoin miners. THORChain has a good track record of operating their network for a long time. It's secure. So when you can secure your assets, secure native Bitcoin or native ETH or whatever, and put it on a lending market, money market, and then take out a stablecoin loan or whatever you want to do, that really speaks and resonates to a lot of people out there. So lending is certainly one of the products that I didn't mention now on the roadmap when you just asked, Chris, but that's definitely something that we look forward to see how much traction it can get in a liquid, secure network as THORChain. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Hans, but that was a bit of a rant.
No, that's not good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of demand for that. Just quietly, you don't have to wrap. I just had, without going into it, just trying to move some funds across chain, across L2s, and just the headaches, the absolute headaches that it has dealing with all the different chains, dealing with the gas, the wrapped assets of wrapped assets moved on different chains. It's just, and then the fragmenting of stuff from L1 to L2. You need L1 gas and L2 gas, and you've got to bridge it. And oh man, and if with Ethereum, you've got to wrap your ETH to work with smart contracts. Don't get me started. Like, it's just the simplicity of working with THORChain and then putting all this app stuff on top means you just need to deal with the native asset and you're golden.
I think what's really exciting about having this sort of unified app layer, it's not like you've got one app layer for BTC and another app layer for every other token, is that if you have a large or whatever, like a position where you're borrowing dollars against ETH, for example, and you decide, actually, no, I want to rotate that and I want that to be BTC collateral, but I don't have the funds to close out this position and open it up again. We have the rails and the composability. I talked about tokenized debt. So the money market will be able to rotate your collateral from ETH to BTC, from native ETH to native BTC, using all the rails and liquidity that are available already, and transfer that debt over, giving you that grace period because it has the guarantee that swap will either execute or revert. And now you have your lending position against native BTC instead of native ETH, which is just, it's nowhere near possible anywhere else.
It's so tedious and cumbersome, as you mentioned, Chris, the way it works right now. And in hindsight, when we look a year from now or whatever, 6 months from now, it's going to look so obvious to the entire industry. Like, of course, you want to secure assets like this with 120 nodes and growing, instead of just having one multi-sig or whatever you rely on today with all these wrapped assets. It's so opaque, difficult to assess the risk. So yeah, I think it's going to look obvious 6-12 months from now that we're doing it right, what we're doing here. And as you say, Hans, if you want to deploy a dApp that deals with liquidity, which to be honest is going to be most applications getting deployed in crypto these days, Rujira should be in your at least top 3 of choices that you have to, or networks that you should consider deploying on. Of course, people consider Ethereum, maybe some people Solana, but Rujira should be up there, because why would you fragment liquidity like the other ecosystems? You just go to one app layer, deploy once there, and let it be, right? You don't have to deal with all these layer 2s and whatnot that you see on other networks.
Totally agree. When THORChain integrates Solana, and it's going to do Base soon as well, or Base first, then Solana, then Rujira will be able to access that as well. So you'll be able to move across all the connected chains seamlessly. That is going to be cool. So the idea, I just covered on this, Hans, the idea that if I have a loan that's backed by native ETH, I can swap that for native Bitcoin or native Solana. That is really cool. That is not possible. That is so
it's going to be a mindfuck. It's going to be a mindfuck to most people. They're not going to understand, like, how is this even possible in the first place? We're so used to all these wrapped, opaque versions of tokens. It's not going to be. It's going to be too good to be true to some people. But that's what we're here for, to make it easy, secure.
That is so cool. In the last spaces, there's this talk about savings or stop the synths minting, which I'm not going to go into. They wanted to consider that if there's an alternative. So, is there a Ruji Savers? I know there is actually a Ruji Savers. Can you talk to me more about that, or is it a bit too early?
We actually have a Nami on the space here. So anyone who's curious to see what Savers is all about, you can go on Nami protocol. But yeah, so there's a of exciting applications besides what we call quote unquote the core dApps getting deployed on Rujira. So as we talked about, there's trade, there's pools, there's lending, there's liquidations, there's perps, but we have all these other third-party builders coming to Rujira, deploying on Rujira. One of them is Nami, which I personally really look forward to, having people be able to essentially deposit their stablecoins, USDC, let's say, and have it work for you. So it's a very, very simple interface. You can deposit, you can withdraw, but what happens underneath can be infinitely more complex, right? It can be deploying the stablecoin to all kinds of strategies. All the possibilities that we see across Rujira is essentially open for Nami to tap into, and the yield opportunities there. So I don't want to butcher it. I want Nami to explain themselves when we get to that point. But all I can say is join the Rujira Dev Discord. You see in the left side the ecosystem category, and it's almost growing by day. New channels get created every day for new teams coming on board. We're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Obviously, there's a lot of work to get to that point. Hans is busy making it possible for other builders to build on Rujira. But yeah, the ecosystem is growing. If you are interested in building with Rujira, make sure to join the Discord so don't be a stranger, basically. But yeah, the analogy that I like to make, and I've said it a couple of times, but I'll say it again for anyone who hasn't heard it. You can think of it like the iPhone. So when you turn on the iPhone, you're going to have some pre-installed applications, and Notes application, for example. But you can also go on the App Store and install all kinds of other Notes applications. Rujira is going to be the same. We're going to have some core pre-installed dApps there. And then as we expand, we're going to have other teams build and deploy all kinds of applications on Rujira, specifically for different verticals that the core team is not going to work on. We will let other builders deploy and build on that. I hope that answers your question, Chris.
It does, yeah. I saw the Nami update in the Discord server, so cool. We can probably revisit some of these other topics at a later stage. I did have a question. The Ruji token, because I know there's going to be a Rune Ruji pool to integrate the layers. What is that going to be, like a bank token, like Rune is, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, it'll be a bank token. So we smart contracts will have access to what's kind of termed the token factory. So they'll be able to issue new denominations of tokens and mint and burn them. Basically the same way that you would do with a CW20, but just control over bank tokens. So yeah, Ruji will be one of them.
All right, cool. We can take some questions if anyone has any questions. I don't want to allow some time there. If anyone has that, just invite or request to speak, and I'll allow that. Is there anything, Mark, that Hans, I haven't covered that you would want to cover with regards to exactly what's happening next with the next release and what people expect to see within Rujira in the next coming week or so?
Yeah. So
go on, Mark. Yeah. Sure.
Go ahead.
No. What I was going to say was that's what I thought now. Yeah. So we've got like an internal DevNet running already with the Cosmos integrations, getting all some of the deployments tested and being able to start. Actually, kind of, there is a version of an app layer on THORChain that exists somewhere in the world, just not on the mainnet, not yet, and not with real assets, but it's very, very close.
It is indeed, and so we're basically laying the foundation for other people than Hans to deploy on a DevNet, and then StageNet, and then of course mainnet once everything checks out. So as as we already talked about, we have multiple teams already building. We have obviously the OG Kujira team. We have the Levana team, and a few others who are helping on the infrastructure side. Dan from Defiant and Starsquid to spin up these devnets, for example, to make it easier for us to build together and in parallel. So that's where we are right now. It's very sort of in the trenches, heads down building, and that's gonna continue in the foreseeable future for the rest of the year, most likely, and then you'll start seeing products getting leaked, I'm sure, in Q1 next year. So stay tuned for that. Everything until then is preparation, and while the infrastructure side of things and the setups are getting ready for builders to deploy on Rujira, we have all these different teams preparing as much as they can. So if there's any changes to the UI, if there's any changes to how they route things or bindings, all these different things that they need to consider when they move from the Kujira layer 1 blockchain to THORChain and the app layer. So we're preparing as much as we can, but we need to let developers cook like Hans to have the entire infrastructure ready for everybody.
Yeah, totally. That's why, I really feel that for all the stuff that's going on, I put this in the dev Discord, just, this is the biggest dependency, getting the next release, because that has the V50 as secured assets. It has all this other stuff that is required to fully unblock the development of, the app layer, which is all these teams are ready to go. So that's why we just want to, that's like the number one priority. So all that can happen, and then the devs can get onto, from a THORChain point of view, all the chain integrations, getting the vault sorter for EDDSA to enable Solana, getting base out, and all that type of stuff. I think that's really important, just to focus on getting that done, so the app layer can be in on time, really as soon as possible, just because it's going to have such a great effect for THORChain and for the greater crypto ecosystem. So Nami, you've got something to say. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to touch on the general
Nami, can
user
you hear me?
experience. Yeah, can you hear me? Is that right?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Perfect. Whatever. Quick one. Just because I was talking to Hans about it. Hans, why don't you tell a little bit about the RPC issue that we had and how you're going to solve it? Because I think that's for us developers and for the user experience we can offer to the users. It's a big, big step that I'd really like to hear more about it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I think there's a broader piece here, and that's one of improving two things: improving coming from building Kujira as whatever it was, 5 or 6 individual protocols, and then latterly merging them into this unified experience, which was designed to be to feel more like a centralized exchange kind of experience. So instead of labeling the protocols with protocol names, like was the status quo in most of crypto, labeling them with what they do, trade and lend and pull. When in improving that user experience, it made the developer experience a whole bunch worse, because suddenly you have, you want to load somebody's portfolio, so you want to load all the limit orders they've got open, all the bids they've got, the liquidation bids they've got open, any kind of LP positions they've got, as well as all their token balances, and maybe like their borrow positions and their LTVs on them, and trying to build out a UI that managed all that data. It became way too complex because of technical debt that we carried over from the individual protocol deployments. And so what we're building, and this is kind of to talk to more generally to the developer experience for new teams that might be interested in building and integrating with Rujira, is that we have, first of all, this unified wallet connection experience and transaction signing abstraction. So, because your protocol can now be interacted with from any layer 1 which have their own transaction structures, their own wallets for signing, blah, 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 and can also be interacted directly from the app layer by calling transactions on THORChain. Instead of having to rewrite all those wallet connections, you just create a transaction button and you provide the execute message, and then the app itself will convert that either into a layer 1 transaction with a deposit into an Asgard vault with the right memo, or a message execute contract on the app layer. So that takes a huge lift off your hands. You get the component library, all the style guides, Figmas, everything to kind of build out your UI without having to reinvent the wheel. And then the point that JP is talking about there is this data layer where we it's very much work in progress at the moment, but it'll be a more kind of traditional Web 2 type GraphQL interface that allows you as a developer to just be more declarative over the data you need in your app. So whether you need account balances, or whether you need open limit orders, or whether you need filled liquidation bids, you can just declare that I need these bids, and then you don't worry about your data fetching and refreshing it and loading it. And so it means that you, as a developer building your app into this unified experience, we can maintain development velocity and have lots of teams building concurrently in parallel without sacrifice, really.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks. Sounds like a no-brainer to build here, I guess. Thanks, guys.
One thing I would, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me, Chris? I know you
Yep,
had some issues
I can
with
hear
audio.
you.
Yeah. One thing I would like to highlight that we haven't highlighted so much in the past, at least, is the launchpad, or Rujira Ventures, we call it. Basically, there's all these different tokens getting launched. We just need to look at the pump.fun and all these different meme coins. JP is launching a lot of tokens. Like, there's a lot of tokens going around these days. We want to tap into that. We want to make a launchpad for people to easily not just launch a token in terms of launching a sale of a token, but also make it liquid in the Rujira trade. So that's a nice sort of seamless integration that we cross over between the core dApps. So basically, when you do a token sale on Rujira Ventures, immediately after it will be possible to trade on Rujira Trade. So not only can you raise your funds, you can also have a token that is liquid to be able to trade. So that's pretty cool, and that's something that we already see on pilot on Rujira today. So if you want to try it out, you can see the track record there. But obviously, we want to bring that over to THORChain, because then when you deploy something like this on THORChain, and no critic to historically to Rujira, but one of the Achilles heels for Rujira has always been the liquidity, and THORChain solves that. So the argument to not just do a token sale and but also launch it in a market when you have liquidity like THORChain, that argument becomes much stronger. So that's something that I also look forward to. I know others in the ecosystem, including JP, looks forward to have a launchpad on Rujira Ventures. So yeah, I just want to highlight that product as well, because it tends to get forgotten in all the other exciting products that we are that we're planning to launch on Rujira.
Awesome, thanks. If anybody has any questions, just request to speak. We can do the questions in a minute. I have one question for Hans. So some people have said that what's going to be deployed is a copy paste of what currently is on Rujira for people that know Rujira. I know that's not the case. Maybe you could talk, how will Rujira be different from Rujira? How will the apps be different when they go on THORChain? Are they going to be different? And if so, how?
Yeah, so I think this gives us an opportunity to address some of the kind of technical debt to a degree, and maybe some of the kind of protocol design limitations as we redeploy, because the contracts will need migrating. And so, yeah, it's a good opportunity to make some of these changes. So I spoke already about the kind of virtualized orders with Finn and the way that the trading works there. One of the kind of the effects of that, of being able to virtualize orders, means that if you have, for example, a BTC USD trading pair, where your orders are being virtualized around the spot price, because that liquidity is not being transferred, that same market maker can now virtualize orders on Orca, for example. And so you can create a strategy where the market maker kind of bids max 10%, max 7% discount, whatever it is. One of the really nice things about this now is that where one of the limitations of the previous lending market protocol design was that borrow caps had to be set as fixed values and proactively managed and updated, we can now dynamically set those borrow caps, because we have more of a guarantee of the liquidity that will be available in Orca for liquidations. And it's not taking anything away from individuals' ability to bid. You can still go in, you can still place your liquidation orders, your liquidation bids, but what this does is it provides a liquidity backstop that we can then use for more reliable calculations around max borrow limits, which will just help safer borrowing. And there's a handful of these sort of enhancements that we'll bring over. So the apps will look broadly the same. There aren't going to be kind of any massive overhauls, but it's not just going to be a copy paste. There's going to be a chance for things to get better.
All right, sweet. Let's go to the last call for questions. We've covered the V50 upgrade, what that means for THORChain, and kind of a little bit how that works. We've covered the secure assets, what they are, and some of the considerations around that, as well as how the app layer is going to integrate into THORChain as well. So if anyone has any questions on that, now's the time to ask.
I see Reed asking a somewhat specific question, but I think still interesting. The question is, will I be able to use native BTC to directly loan Potato on, let's say, Base? I guess you can take that, Hans, if you want, but as long as there are secured assets, that's the general answer. As long as they are secured and available on the app layer, you can really borrow and lend as crazy as you want. But yeah, I'll let you answer on this.
Yeah, so it'll as long as as long as the assets exist as secured assets on THORChain, and as long as there is sufficient liquidity to support this new dynamic borrow cap, then yes.
Indeed. All right. I don't know, Chris, if you can, if you're still there. I know you have some audio issues right now. Yep.
Okay, cool. I think we can, unless anyone has any other questions, we can probably just call it here. I want to thank everyone for joining. I think it's been really productive. I know I've learned a lot. So, yeah, thanks to Mark and Hans for attending.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you for hosting, Chris.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
All right, take care, guys. Happy building.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
See you. Ciao.